What's up guys, Intelitech Studios here, and we have yet another vacuum cleaner review. This is a review of the Hoover Elite Rewind, model UH710102, and the model UH71013, which is this blue variant. So the red variant is 02, the blue variant is 03. I have both versions, although the red variant is the one that you are most likely to find nowadays. But, you know, this review is obviously the same for every Elite Rewind with this body style design, regardless of the color scheme. And there's also an older version of this that actually says Elite on the front. This is technically the Hoover Rewind bagless. This is the Elite Rewind bagless. Or this one's just the Rewind bagless. The other older version that's like purple, which I have had on the channel before, actually says Elite Rewind. Though they are the exact same vacuum. And that's the reason why I am referring to this as the Elite Rewind, even though it doesn't say Elite anywhere on the product packaging or product itself. So if you're wondering, that's the reason why I'm referring to it as an Elite, even though it is technically, by the exact naming scheme, this version not an Elite. So, as you can see, we have a ton of vacuums behind it, including two other Elites. And this machine is one that I have been very, very happy with, to say the least. Obviously, this one, you can tell the bin's all clouded with dust because I've been using this, and I've been very happy with it. Now, I won't be keeping all three of these. One of these red ones I'll be returning because I bought the red one at Big Lots for $80 on sale, normally $100, but I got it for $80 because there was a 20% off sale, so I got it for $80. And I purchased what was supposed to be the blue variant, the 3 model, that blue one, back there, for $130 on Walmart's website. So not through Walmart themselves, because Walmart doesn't carry this anymore, they carry an updated version. But it was through a third-party seller through Walmart.com. So that seller sent me the wrong one. They sent me another red one. So since they sent me another red one, after I conduct this review, I will be putting it back in the box and taking it back to Walmart and exchanging it. But I didn't want to send it back until I for sure had a blue one in my hands. So then I purchased through Amazon from a set of people known as the Disney shoppers, which have links for the blue variant, which is this one, on both eBay and Amazon. I got it through Amazon because it ended up being a little bit cheaper. So this is that blue variant that I got from Amazon through the Disney shoppers. So if you want to get this blue variant, the Disney shoppers, which is, again is the name of the people selling the listings on both Amazon and eBay, you will want to snap these up before they are gone. Otherwise, you know, you will be just stuck with the red ones. You will pay more though, because again, these red ones are in Big Lots right now for $100 stock price. These ones, after taxes and shipping, I paid $120 something on Amazon, and if I had gotten the exact same machine through eBay, it would have been about $130 something. So, and the reason why I was even considering getting through eBay is because Amazon had a much longer wait for it to arrive, but it actually arrived a lot sooner. So if you're going to buy from the Disney shoppers this machine, get it through their Amazon listing, not their eBay listing, because you will save a little bit of money going through Amazon instead of through eBay for the same vacuum. So if you want this blue version, for now, you are able to get it through them. Again, I bought this through them, so as you can see, I have no issues with it. It is just fine, and, you know, it seems all right. So again, this is the blue variant. This one was manufactured in 2017, and then one of these red ones was manufactured in 2018, and the other one in 2019. I forgot which one. I think this one was 2018, and this one was 2019. So yeah, but obviously, you know, they're basically the same between the 3 and the 2 units. Besides the color, the only difference is that this blue one has a clear hose. The red one has a black hose. Personally, I prefer the black hose, and I don't think you should go out of your way to get this just because of the hose. I think you should get it if you're going to get it because of the color. Although I guess the hose is a more functional reason for paying the extra money. And I believe this one did cost about $120, $130 whenever it was new, when this blue version was in the store. Because I'm assuming this is like the deluxe version. Kind of like how with the old Elite Rewind, the red one was, or the red and yellow one was the standard edition, and the blue and turquoise one was the deluxe edition. And I know there are a couple other color schemes that fit one of those two, but either way, that's kind of the closest parallel that I can see between the original 2007-ish Elite Rewind and these newer ones. So either way, that's kind of a lot of babbling about the colors and SKUs and stuff, but the point about this review is obviously demonstrated by the fact that I have several of these, so I have no problems with getting parallels. You know a vacuum is good whenever I'm willing to have more than one. And again, one of these red ones is going back, but I will be having a red one and a blue one, at least for a little bit. I may eventually get rid of the red one and just keep the blue one, but for now, I have 3 of them, which I think emphasizes how much I really enjoy this machine. Now, a couple things to get out of the way. First, I have other machines here to compare. And, you know, because again, this is in the $80 to $130-ish price bracket, depending on where you get it from. So there are other machines you can compare it to. Now, as far as all of these machines, all of these ones back here and this one right here, these two are the ones that I would pretty much be deciding between. Because for all of these machines, every single one that you see back here, all 4 of them, the filtration on this, and the bagless technology on this, and the dual cyclonic technology on this, even though they all advertise the multi-cyclonic, is far better than any of these other machines. And you can tell that's Bissell and Dirt Devil, so I'm not just picking on any specific brands. Obviously, I'm normally a Bissell collector, and most of my machines are Bissell, so that's not me playing brand favorites, that's just the facts. Because I've used these Bissell bagless machines out on my back porch to clean, and the filters do not keep the dust out of the motor. This does. I use this to clean my back porch, and if you want to see that video, I may upload it at some point. And I also just now, before I film this video, cleaned the house with it afterwards. And we can see that if we take this off, again, nice twist and snap mechanism that I really like. Compared to the T-Series, which I do have a couple of those, this is a lot sturdier, this is a lot more durable. I like this system a lot more on the Elite Rewind than on the T-Series. But you can see there is fine dust on it. But you notice the fine dust stops. The other side of this filter is completely clean, which is good. Now, it does mean that this dual cyclonic technology does let dust through. And that is something that you'll have to deal with, whether that is through this Hoover or through a lot of these Bissells. And obviously that Dirt Devil isn't even cyclonic. It's got a filter in the dust cup. So that's, you know, single cyclonic, which isn't necessarily very good filtration system at all. So while both dual cyclonic systems, whether in this Hoover or in a lot of those Bissells, do let dust through the cyclones because they're all dual cyclonic. They say multi-cyclonic, they're dual cyclonic. Some people argue that dual is still considered multi. I say dual. I always emphasize the difference between dual and multi-cyclonic. These are all dual cyclonic. Again, except the Dirt Devil. So the difference is that the filter on this is a lot better. The filtration on this better, because not only does this have a better quality pre-motor filter and a better quality HEPA filter, it has a better quality seal, meaning that this gasket up here is completely clean. So despite all of this, the HEPA filter on the bottom is still completely clean. So that is much, much better than what you find on a lot of these Bissells, where these post-motor filters are not HEPA, and they're also just, you know, not good quality. I think the Clean View does have a HEPA filter, I think. So the Clean View would be better than these two Power Force Helix Turbo Rewinds, but this still has the better filtration. Now, the only scenario where the filtration will be better is if you go for a bagged machine, because if you get a bagged machine at this price point, you don't have to worry as much about the sealed system or the exhaust filter because of the fact that you can put HEPA bags in here. And Clean Fairy makes HEPA bags that are Bissell Style 7, and I also found some Style 7, what I believe are HEPA bags at Home Depot. So, again, I haven't confirmed whether or not those are HEPA bags, but I just uploaded my Home Depot video so you can see what I'm talking about. So this filtration on this machine is a lot better. So for this price point, if you want a bagless system and you care about filtration, then definitely go for the Elite Rewind over any of these other Bissells or Dirt Devils. This Hoover is much better. It's not a sealed system, but it will have better quality seals. It will be better of a seal system. It will be a system with a better seal than any of these other machines, and better quality filtration because the actual filters are better and the dual cyclonic mechanism is more effective. So that's another thing. Filtration is definitely an important factor, and this machine is definitely a lot better than other machines for that price point. If I can get this thing back on. But, yeah, because you can see, obviously this one's clouded with dust, but you can see on either of these that there is an actual cyclone here inside here that actually drops the dirt to the bottom. And also, unlike some other machines, there is no intake on the bottom of this, which I despise whenever vacuums have cyclonic systems where the intake is through the middle, because that means dust that's on the outside of this flap can get sucked into the motor, or if there's a filter around here, can get sucked into that filter. I do not like that. This machine does not have that system. Granted, neither do any of these Bissells, and I don't think the Dirt Devil does either. Yeah, the Dirt Devil doesn't either. So none of these systems have that issue, but it is something nonetheless that I do need to mention because some vacuums have that, and I despise that. Even my Dyson Lightball has that, where the intake is through the cyclone assembly, and I do not like that. So that's another point that I like about this Hoover Elite Rewind, and another reason why I really like it. Another reason to really like it is its cleaning performance. This does very, very well. I would say that this probably will clean a little bit better than most of these other machines. I would say it's pretty comparable to that CleanView, and slightly better than those Bissells, and definitely a couple notches better than that Dirt Devil. So, based on the experience of using all these machines, I think that is, you know, an important thing. I do think that this Powerlifter bagged pet, and there's also the CleanView swivel pet, which I don't have right here, but it's the bagless version of this that also has a swivel neck and retails for the same price that this does at Big Lots at Walmart. That triple action brush roll that machine has is actually really good, and that does kind of make the performance a little bit more on par with each other. But again, when you're comparing this bagless version, while the swivel pet does have a swivel neck and is lighter weight, the filtration also isn't as good. So as far as would you rather have better filtration or have a swivel neck, that's for you to decide. For me personally, I would rather go with this, but that Bissell would do better on hard floors because these Powerlifters have a squeegee on the bottom. Which brings us into hard floor cleaning, since we just covered carpet cleaning, how this would be a little bit better than some other machines, and the filtration would be a little bit better. But what about hard floor performance? Hard floor performance on this is very subpar. Now, hard floor performance on this is not something that you'd be looking for a machine for this price point. At the very least, if you can't get a machine like the Shark Navigator Liftaway for about $150 that would have a brush roll shutoff switch, then you'd want to get a machine like the Powerlifter that has a squeegee on the bottom of it, so that way any debris that's kicked out from the brush roll gets caught by the squeegee and then brought back into the air path to be sucked up into the machine. So since these machines do not have that, then that means that, you know, they're not great. In fact, even these machines, these Bissells right here that don't have squeegees on the bottom, will still clean on floors a little bit better than this machine. So granted, none of these are really recommended for floors ideally, because if you run a brush roll on hard floors, flat on hard floors, that could either damage your floors, depending on what type of flooring you have. If you have like hardwood or a very fine linoleum floor, if you have tile or something, it wouldn't matter as much. Or if you also live in a house where you don't care about tearing up the floor, then that's also not a factor. But the biggest thing is that it will destroy your brush roll over time, because that brush roll is hitting a very, very hard surface, and that's wearing down the bristles and could possibly cause the bearings to get screwed up because that's an uneven pressure on the brush roll. So, you know, if you don't care about either of those things, then and you just care about which one is going to pick up stuff off of the floors better, then this still is not as good as something like this, or even something like these. So, but again, the difference is minimal. It will still pick up, but again, you're going to have more stuff kicked out the back of it than some of these other machines, and they already don't do very well in that aspect either, because again, if there's no squeegee and no brush roll shutoff, then it's not going to do very well. So again, if you're comparing these two head to head, then for hard floor performance, this one is much superior. So another thing regarding the performance is the height adjustments. This has 4 height adjustments. Many of these other machines have 5 height adjustments. That difference doesn't really matter. This is still plenty of adjustments. I would say 4, at least 3 adjustments is good. Once you get past 5 height adjustments, then it starts to be kind of superfluous, and it just gets to the point where it can be confusing. So, but at the same time, it doesn't hurt to have it there. So, the height adjustments, they're fine. The newer Elite Rewind Plus that I reviewed a little bit ago has an extra notch option, so that one has 1 extra adjustment option. And there are some SKUs of that newer Elite, like the Home Depot one that I showed a couple days ago, that actually do have a brush roll shutoff switch. I don't know if there was a version of this that had a brush roll shutoff switch. I believe there was, but if your version has that, then you want to make sure that the machine is off before you engage the hard floor mode, because that's putting tension on the belt. And if you do it while the system is running and spinning the belt, you could cause the belt to slip or even burn out entirely. And obviously burning out a belt is not ideal. Now, burning out a belt brings us into servicing of this machine. Now, this machine is relatively easy to service. It's actually better than the Elite Rewind Plus that I mentioned, because that was one of my big gripes with that Elite Rewind Plus, was the fact that you can't easily take off the nozzle, like all of these other machines. This one, actually, I think the Dirt Devil might. No, the Dirt Devil does too. Well, whatever, I'll cover that in the review of that. But this does have the easy disassembly of the nozzle, where you can pull these 2 brackets off on either side and then pull off this hose with these 2 screws. Then the entire base can remove, and you can put the entire thing in the sink to clean it. Especially if you have pets, then static cling on the bottom of this, you will get a lot of dust in the corners of this, and this will look very, very gross looking. But we can see we just have a few simple screws right here that we take off, and we can pull off the brush panel just like many other machines in this price range, and we can service the belt, the brush roll, and anything else you need to get to. The layout is very similar to a Bissell. If you've worked on a Bissell before, or if you own a Bissell, the actual servicing of this area is very similar to a Bissell. So, which is definitely a good thing. And another thing regarding repairability is the availability of parts. Since this machine has been on the market for a while, then finding parts shouldn't be too difficult. It still would, finding parts in my personal experience, both as a consumer and as a repair technician, finding parts for a lot of these Bissells is actually easier than finding it for certain Hoover models, especially newer models. But they're still about on the same level. You can still order parts for these, and you can still find them much easier than you would find it for something like a Eureka or a Dirt Devil, or even certain Shark vacuums. So that's another thing. If you're worried about replacement parts, then this one is better than many other options. But in my personal experience, again, as someone who's been repairing vacuum cleaners for 15 years, these Bissells are generally the best when it comes to being able to easily and quickly find replacement parts for pretty much everything you need. So I know some people who are also repair technicians who may be watching this may have had a heart attack by saying that, but it's my experience. And fundamentally, you can say whatever you want about repair channels and about finding schematics. All that is relevant, and I do agree with that. That is one of my complaints with Shark. But if your average person breaks the bottom plate on their vacuum or something like that, and they go on eBay and they can find it for one vacuum but not for one consistently, then I don't see how you can say that that vacuum is more difficult to repair. That just doesn't make sense, because there are people out there that do care about fixing their vacuum cleaners themselves. I know a lot of people like to pretend that you're only supposed to take them to your local vacuum shop, because people will say, even with the most stupidly easy repair that anyone can do with a little bit of training, people will say, always take it to your local shop. I disagree with that, even as someone who fixes these. I think if you can fix it yourself, that's even better. I think right to repair is very important. So, with that said, this machine is pretty good in that aspect. So, that's good. Finding parts for this shouldn't be too big of a deal. And again, actually cleaning it out and servicing it is very easy as well. So, as far as other things to mention about this, the rewind mechanism on this is a lot more sturdy feeling and feels a lot more robust than some of these Bissells. Now, this particular Bissell, the pet variant of the Power Force Helix Turbo Rewind, the rewind mechanism on this feels great. It feels very solid, very confident, and it feels like it's going to last a long time. But many people I know who have gotten the standard green rewind, Bissell Power Force Helix Turbo Rewind, have had issues with the rewind mechanism. And I do not have the most confidence in that mechanism either from a little time I've played with it, considering I haven't even used the vacuum yet. You know, that says a lot. So, if you're worried about the rewind mechanism on that machine breaking, then definitely go with the pet variant, which currently is about $90. That's how much I paid for mine, was about $90. So this machine for about $80 to $100 is pretty similar in that aspect. So while this machine is lighter and the rewind does feel good on this, I feel like I have more confidence with this one because this one's been around for the longest. Hoover's been doing the rewind mechanism on the uprights a lot longer than Bissell and many other companies have. Obviously, Dirt Devil has a version of this machine that has a rewind as well, and I don't have as much confidence in that either. So, obviously, rewind mechanisms breaking is a very important thing because if this mechanism breaks, you don't have any cord winders on the machine to wrap the cord around, and also this is not an easy part to get to and to replace, at least not compared to simply replacing a cord hook that may have broken off or something to that effect. So that is one thing. If you are a little bit rougher with your vacuums and you're worried about the rewind mechanism, then this machine is a much better option than other machines from similar brands like Dirt Devil and Bissell with rewind mechanisms, because those machines a lot of times have been hit or miss, whereas these ones have been relatively consistent, and I've seen much less issues with these machines. And the only time I ever see an issue with these is if they have been heavily abused, and even then, they often will deal with it very effectively. So that is definitely a positive for these Elite Rewinds. So as far as that, there's not much else to say. It's maybe we could cover the hose and attachment set. Again, this particular model has a black hose. The blue model has a clear hose, but the actual reach on the hoses are pretty much identical. It's just a matter of, the clear one will be easier to see clogs on, but it's also going to look a lot grosser after a while because the dust will essentially turn the hose gray. So, because this hose is wrapped around here, that does mean that it is in theory easier to clog than some of these other machines, the Bissell specifically, that are more straightforward. The Dirt Devil would clog a lot easier because there's a lot more passageway for it to go through before it gets to the container. But this one does, in theory, have more areas where the hose could clog. But because this hose is a lot wider than the Bissell's and the motor is more powerful and it has a lot more suction, then that means that clogs tend to not be as frequent on here as the Bissell. But the difference is probably splitting hairs. So, if you're worried about clogs, again, these machines are pretty much equally easy to service, other than maybe this one having to take out this screw to pull the hose off. But besides that, they're pretty much identical as far as being able to service them. So if your vacuum gets clogged, it should be easy to service this one just as easily as many of these other machines. So that's not necessarily a pro or a con for this machine. It's just another thing that is positive in general. So this hose does look funky on here. It's really hard to get this hose to look right, but most people probably aren't going to care about that. They're just going to care about it actually working, and that is one thing that is nice. This does have a latch to hold the hose in instead of a friction fit, which can be nice in some instances and not nice in others. I generally prefer a friction fit, but I have yet to see any of these latches break on any machine that I've serviced, and I've had probably about a couple dozen of these machines, and about half of those I've maybe actually had to service, or over half actually, and none of them have had this button break. So that is definitely good. Although I have seen friction fit systems where the friction has essentially worn away and then the hose isn't secure. So it could go either way. So as far as it having this clip versus having a friction fit, I'm relatively indifferent to it because they both have their advantages and disadvantages as far as keeping the hose secure while you're vacuuming in upright mode. So that's that. As far as the reach on this is going to be not as good as that Dirt Devil, since that Dirt Devil has a wand that's built in and an extra extension wand that's longer than this one. But regarding all the bristles, this one will have better quality reach because the hose does stretch a little bit further, and because it has this anchor point, that means that the vacuum will not tip over, which is a very, very good thing. Many of these bristles, especially if you try to use the crevice tool and especially the turbo brushes, the vacuum will fall over, and it will fall over violently. I've been cleaning with these things and had the machine get yanked over and hit me in the face because of the fact that the suction on the hose will contract the hose and cause it to yank the vacuum towards you, especially considering that many of these vacuums are lightweight. That means that it's pulling that vacuum towards you if you try to use the turbo brush. This machine does not have that problem because, number one, the hose does not contract as much while using the turbo brush, and number two, more importantly, this bracket down here actually makes it to where it is anchored, very similar to what Dyson would offer for a while, where the hoses are at the bottom of the machine so it doesn't tip the vacuum over. In fact, every Dyson pretty much uses that. This has this little anchor point, so that way it will just pull the vacuum along and roll it. Well, maybe not in that case, but it will pull the vacuum along and roll it much more likely than yanking the vacuum over. So that is a very nice addition that does make this design a little bit nicer, because that means that you'll have less situations where you're pulling the vacuum over while using the attachments. Also, regarding the turbo brush, this turbo brush, as you can see, I've used this several times, and the turbo brush still looks brand new, which is definitely a compliment, because the Bissell turbo brushes, including a lot of those like rubbery tipped turbo brushes, which supposedly are supposed to be designed to tangle less, those brushes tangle a lot easierly. That's not a word. They tangle a lot more easily than standard turbo brushes. Both this turbo brush and the older style Bissell turbo brushes, like the one on that clean view, tangle a lot less and bog down a lot less than the newer styles that are on those machines. So this turbo brush, compared to a lot of those other turbo brushes, is much, much better. It's more powerful. It doesn't tangle as easily despite having standard bristles. It's just as easy to service, and it doesn't bog down as easily. These turbo brushes, if you put them straight onto any sort of fabric that you're trying to clean, they will immediately cut out. You've seen that in the Powerlifter Bag Pet demo where I was trying to vacuum my couch, and that turbo eraser pet tool kept cutting out every time I tried to put it on the sofa. The brush would just stop spinning and it would just lock up. And that was the same story with that one as well on the pet version of the Rewind. So this turbo brush is much better. It used to be the case that Bissell made better turbo brushes, but nowadays, generally speaking, the Hoover turbo brushes are better. This turbo brush has been the same one that Hoover's been using for well over a decade now, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and this turbo brush is definitely not broke. So if you value having a good quality turbo brush on your machine, then this one is a good option. And unlike the newer version of the Elite Rewind Plus, this actually rides on board the handle, and you don't have to stick it on the stupid, extension wand and crevice tool section, or on this other post where the brush is supposed to go. The actual tool storage on this is a lot more thought out, and I really appreciate that. Speaking of which, the dusting brush is over here, and the dusting brush on the newer Elite Rewind Plus is much better than this. But the good news is, if you have one of these machines, you can just buy one of those newer brushes, and it will fit on the hose, and it will fit on this post right here. So if you want to upgrade your dusting brush, you can do that. This is more of an upholstery brush because the bristles are a lot stiffer, and the brushes are a lot shorter, and the actual tool is a lot shorter as well. So it's better for dusting harder objects like vents and stuff like that, and ceiling fans, rather than delicate furniture or TVs or anything like that. And also on the extension wand and crevice tool, this crevice tool is a lot nicer than a lot of other crevice tools you get from many of these other machines. In fact, all of these machines have crappier crevice tools than this one does. Even the newer Elite has a shorter crevice tool than this was, but the newer Elite has a longer extension wand, so it kind of balances out. But this extension wand is still longer than many of the Bissells, so the reach on this is going to be better than all these Bissells, but not as good as the Dirt Devil. But since the actual crevice tool and brush tool and turbo brush are all better than the Dirt Devil, then that kind of balances it out as well. Even if the actual simple length of the reach isn't as good, the quality of the tools are a lot better than the Dirt Devil. So beyond that, there's not much else to say. Again, this machine is definitely one that I really like. It also has a little indicator right here, which does work very well for telling you when the airflow is getting blocked. So that's a nice feature. The swivel version of this also has an airflow indicator in a similar spot. And again, that one's $100. This one is $100. Usually at Big Lots, and sometimes you can find it for a bit cheaper or a bit more. And that Clean View is also $100. Then that Rewind is $90, and then that's $80, and that's $70. So you can kind of see like a whole price range of machines compared to this one. But overall, out of all these machines, for cleaning carpets, which one would I pick? Easily I'd pick the Rewind, even though I generally am a fan of Bissell. Now, in some instances, I would probably use the Bissells because the Bissells are lighter weight. So if you care about lightweight vacuums, and that's a very big deciding factor for you, then these two Bissells, or this Dirt Devil, or this Bissell would be a better option than this. But if it's not that big of a deal, having a bit heavier of a machine, then this one is a good option because the build quality on this, because it's heavier and has higher quality materials, will be better than all of these machines. So if you care about build quality, that will be a good thing. Now granted, the handle is one area where build quality doesn't exactly excel, because this handle is rock solid, but this handle is a little bit twisty, whereas all of these Bissell handles are extremely firm and feel very high quality. Actually, this Clean View one isn't as much, even though this Clean View is more expensive. And as well as the swivel version of this, the handle feels really bad on this, but the bag version, the handle is nice. So on these Bissells, the handle is better built, but the rest of the machine is a little bit worse. But again, the build quality on those I don't think is a big deal either, as long as you're not super rough with your vacuums, and I mean super rough. But if you do care about that and you want the machine to feel more substantial, then this is also a better option. So let's go ahead and try this out real quick, and then we can finally wrap up this extra long review. I do wish this machine had a headlight like the oldest Elite Rewind, but unfortunately it doesn't. But none of these other machines do either, so, you know, that's just kind of something you have to deal with nowadays. So, it does have a 12 amp motor, so it will use more power than these other machines that have 8 amp motors. Well, actually, that Clean View has a 12 amp motor, but most of the Clean Views you're going to find are going to have 8 amp motors. So, yeah, not much else to say about it. And I definitely do recommend it, and I do recommend it more than I recommend the newer Elite Rewind Plus, but I still recommend that as well. So just for me personally, I like this one a little bit better, even with the red color scheme versus the blue of the newer ones. So, but yeah, that's the Hoover Elite Rewind model UH7101x and UH7101x. I think I got that correct. Anyways, this is Intelitech Studios signing out. Let me know if you have this vacuum and how you like it in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one. And again, just in case I didn't say it before, I do recommend this. So, go buy it, I guess? Yeah, sure, go buy it. But I personally would wait, because Big Lots a lot of times will have sales on these. So if you can wait for the 20 or 30% off sale and get it for, you know, $75, $80, definitely do that. Because for that price, it kills all of these. So that's good. Anyways, that's the end of the video. Wow, this video is long. Peace.